Buenas tardes, good afternoon. I'm Diego Sánchez de la Cruz. I'm an analyst at Libertad Digital, Libre Mercado, a free market online newspaper here in Spain. I have two questions. One is for Professor Schwartz, one is for Professor Krugman. The one for Professor Krugman, there was an article back in the year 2002 when you urged the Federal Reserve to create a housing bubble to replace the tech bubble, the Nasdaq bubble. Looking back into what you wrote 10 years ago, this is the 10-year anniversary of your prescription, and we've seen that both the US and our country have really suffered from the active promotion of this housing bubble that was active not just from a monetary policy perspective, but also from a political perspective, as we've seen here with the savings banks, or we've seen in the United States with semi-public institutions and the guidance given to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Besides this, I would like to ask to Professor Schwartz and also to Professor Krugman, being he's done some of his best work in the area of commerce, about the issues of protectionism today and what they represent, what challenges they may represent to coming out of this crisis, given the fact that in the 30s, in the decade of the 30s, which is a decade that Professor Krugman is talking about a lot lately, the Smoot-Hawley Act and many other tariff barriers had a lot to do with the creation of a global economic downturn. Thank you.
Okay. So on the first one, I think if I may say, for Christ's sake, give me a break. If you actually read that article, I actually read it. I was joking. I was saying that I was talking about the difficulty of responding purely with monetary policy to the kind of slump we were then expressing, and it's a measure, I might say, of the intellectual bankruptcy of a large part of this debate, that the best they can do is keep on claiming that I was actually advocating the creation of a housing bubble. I obviously wasn't doing that. And I guess I don't believe the story, and the other piece of this, the claim that it was Fannie and Freddie and all of that, that's in the book. So read the book and discover that it is, I call, as I say, it is actually, and this is not my phrase, as Barry Ritholtz was a very apolitical analyst, but he says that's the big lie of U.S. economic debate. It's just not true. It's not what happened. So leave it at that. A word about protectionism. Yeah, I mean, I still am a big defender of open world markets because not out of some religious faith in free trade, but because it's terribly important, especially for the world's poor countries, that they have access to open world markets. Protectionism has been that's been the dog that did not bark. We've had, I mean, there's been some protectionist moves in this crisis, but if you had told anyone 5 years ago that we would have 11% unemployment in the Eurozone, and that we would have, and with the unemployment rate rising after years and years of crisis, and that we'd have 4 million Americans who've been unemployed for more than a year, which hasn't happened since the 1930s, and that there would be so little in the way of protectionist responses, that there would not, in fact, be any ongoing trade wars, I think people would have said, you're crazy. We would have expected to see a huge protectionist reaction. So what's actually happened is that the institutions of global trade, the World Trade Organization, the rules of international trade, have actually held incredibly well under extreme stress. Of all the things that have gone wrong, protectionism is not one of them. We've done very well on that front.
Professor Krugman is right about the situation regarding protectionism. It could have been much, much worse. My only remark is that we have too many bilateral treaties and that the round of the World Trade Organization is not off the ground, and that I would like to see. I think we would agree on that. Would like to see prosper.
My old teacher, Judge Bhagwani, talks about the spaghetti bowl. There are all these strands linking countries. Yeah, that's a mess, but it's not doing a great deal of harm. Right. It's just not the way you want to do it.